Hi, and welcome to the video on function notation. To begin, we need to understand what this f of x notation actually represents. So notice it's f with an x inside these parentheses. We actually say this as f of x. So x is the input. F of x is called the output. Whenever you look at an equation, such as in the example below, f of x really could just take the place of y. Let's show you what I mean. So here's our first example. F of x equals 2x plus 3. F of x really has just taken the place of y. So you may feel more comfortable looking at it this way, but we really want to get used to this new notation, and there's a lot of good reasons why we would rather write this as f of x. To begin with, let's look at the first question, f of 1. What that's telling me is that 1 is the input, and that whatever I'm going to write down here is the output. Notice that if I had just had y equals 2x plus 3, there's actually no place to write down what the input is. So there's our first reason for using function notation. It allows us to see what the input is. So now let's figure out what the output is. If 1 has taken the place of the x, and 1 is the input, that means I'm supposed to do 2 times 1 plus 3. So 2 times 1 is 2. Plus 3 is 5. So in this case, the output was 5. In most of the examples in this class, we're going to use a table to record our inputs and outputs. Sometimes we'll give you the inputs in this column. Sometimes you'll get to make your own. Here's an example of a table where you get to make your own inputs. Let's fill in one that we already know. We know that when 1 is the input, 5 is the output. Let's choose another example. Let's make the input 2. What would the output be if the input was 2? That would mean, I'm going to replace x with 2. So 2 times 2 plus 3. 2 times 2 is 4, and then plus 3 is 7. So if the input is 2, the output is 7. What I would like you to do is to come up with 2 inputs of your own and find the outputs that go along with them. Notice that this is something that you'd only know if you had been listening to the audio of this video. Otherwise, it looks blank. Right? If you weren't listening to me, you'd say, oh, I'm just going to leave these blank. Do not leave them blank. So you're going to choose 2 of your own inputs and figure out the outputs. Again, do not leave them blank, or else you will receive no credit on this assignment. Let's move on to another type of example. This time it says, for what value of x does f of x equal 21? So notice there's nothing in the spot where the x is. There's no number there now. So that means we don't know what the input is. But we do know what the output is, right? Isn't f of x the output? So if the output is 21, that's basically saying, what value of x? What is the input? Let's figure out what number we would plug in for x up here, and then the answer would be 21. Really, whenever somebody's asking that, saying, what is the input given an output, that's asking you to solve an algebraic equation. So let's solve it. 2x plus 3 equals 21. Notice that the 21 just took the place of the f of x. Now I just have an algebra 1 type of an equation to solve. So let's undo what's happening to the x. So I'm going to subtract 3 first. So I get 2x equals 18. Then I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. So x equals 9. And remember, this was asking for what the input was. And since x was in the spot of the input, we now know that x is really a 9. So we really did two types of problems using this function notation. The first was given the input, figuring out the output, and then the opposite way. Given the output, what's that input? Let's try the next example. This time we're given the inputs and outputs. That's interesting. So I guess that means there's a little bit less work to do. Let's see if we can figure these out. G of 1/2. So the input is 1/2. In other words, the x column, or the inputs, I'm going to look where there's a 1/2. Here it is. And it's asking, what is the output? 70 is the output. We figured out that question. That was a lot quicker than the others because there was a little less work to do, right, since this table was already completed for us. Let's see if we can solve this one. Solve g of x equals 3. Now this word solve sounds a little different than the question before, but it really is asking for the same thing. Notice it says g of x, that's an output, equals 3. Well, the g of x column is right here. I see a 3 here and a 3 here. How do I know which is the answer? Well, if you're thinking that both are the correct answer, you are correct. So I'm going to say that x equals -3 as my first answer, and x equals 100 as a second answer. So it's just some more practice going in both directions. How about the last one? On the back, we have example 3, and this time we have a graph. Your graph is already labeled h of x. I'm just going to label mine as well. Okay, so we have h of x. Now, the x-axis, which is down here, those are our inputs. Here's the y-axis. But remember that h of x is taking the place of the y. So I'm going to label that the h of x axis. So let's try this question. What is h of 5? 5 is an input. Here are my inputs. There's 5. How do I find my answer? Well, I'm going to go up or down. Not in this case, though. I'm going to go up until I see where the graph is with an x value of 5. So right there. So if the x value is 5, and that's where the graph is when x is 5, I'm looking for the output. What output does that go with? That goes with 4. That answers the question. Something else I just wanted to remind you about, and that is that when you're looking at a grid, each box doesn't necessarily represent 1. Look at this. This box is at 2, and this box is at 3. So there's no way that these boxes represent 1 unit, right? These actually represent 0.25 units each. Just to beware. Moving on to the last question here. Solve h of x equals 2. So this time h of x is the 2. Here's the h of x axis. There's 2. Now I'm going to go over to where the graph is. Right here. Something else that's important to realize is that the graph is this interesting looking shape. This entire picture, I would call that the grid. The graph is this actual like line configuration. Okay, so h of 2 over to the graph right here. What x value does that pair up with? 1. It's the only value it pairs up with, I believe. Let's take a look. That was the one that paired up with 2. If I keep going, there's no other point on the graph that also has an h of x value of 2. So that is our only answer for this problem. All All right, so now your job is to try the on your own problems below. Remember that you want to attempt them. They all have to be attempted to get full credit, and it's okay to get them wrong. You're just going to try your best, and I wish you good luck with that.